of Wednesday, February 6, 2019 to order. I'd like to also thank you all for being here this morning. This is fabulous. We welcome the citizens that come to our meeting, which is always open to the public. And thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules today to be with us. The first order of business, if you're just coming in or you haven't had an opportunity to sign in, please bestow. And if there is any public comment, we welcome that now. If you are unfamiliar with our process, or even possibly who we are, I am City Commissioner Chairwoman Lisa Healy. To my left is Vice Chair Al Schmidt, and to my right is Chairman Anthony Clark. The first public commenter, please come forward. Excuse me, I'm sorry, just housekeeping. You'll have 3 minutes to give your comments, okay? Thank you.
My name is Gabriel Bell. I'm the staff attorney, as well as the project director for protection and advocacy at Disability Rights Pennsylvania. Some of you may know Disability Rights Pennsylvania is the federally mandated protection and advocacy organization for the state of Pennsylvania. I am here to urge you not to replace your existing voting system with hand-marked paper ballots. The use of separate voting systems for voters with disability amounts to unequal treatment under the law. As you know, important civil rights laws were enacted to protect fundamental rights to vote for all Americans. The Help America Vote Act is the most recent law that protects those rights. I want to stress that HAVA requires more than just adequate staffing at the polling place. For a system to be considered accessible, the voting machine should be turned on, set up, equipped with the necessary access features and positions to provide privacy as other voters. However, our experience is that voters with disabilities often discover that the one accessible machine at their polling location is not turned on, not set up, or not maintained in good working order. They also often encounter poll workers who do not know how to turn it on, set it up, or assist them in using the voting machine. And by the way, this is across Pennsylvania. I'm not just talking about Philadelphia. In addition to HAVA, the American with Disabilities Act requires officials responsible for conducting all public elections to make sure that accessible voting systems are maintained and function properly in each election, and that election officials have been adequately trained to operate them. Poll workers need to be knowledgeable about the equipment and be able to assist them. Disability Rights Pennsylvania strongly feels that all voters should use the accessible voting system at each polling site, regardless of disability, rather than limiting the use of accessible voting system to just voters with disabilities. This will ensure that the accessible voting systems are set up properly and poll workers are accustomed to the system throughout election day. DRP will continue to be vigilant and will take appropriate action if persons with disabilities do not have the same opportunity for access and participation as other voters. We strongly feel that separate is not equal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good morning. I'm Margarita Larson. I live at 511 Woodland.
Louder, please.
Oh, okay. I live at 511 Woodland Terrace in the city, and I'm a retired professor of sociology at Temple. I have taught and studied political sociology. I have a few questions. I think that the hand-marked ballots are used all over Europe. People are very surprised there are electronic machines which are hackable and not traceable. The Carter Center makes it one of the conditions of its observation of elections that there be traceable paper ballots. The machines that you're considering, the Excel, well-named Excel system, which is very, very large and very, very expensive, doesn't have easily accessible paper ballots. Furthermore, hand-marked paper ballots have been recommended by all the experts and the state's authorities, from the governor to Senator Casey to others. Why are you considering machines that are so large $15 million more than we have and spending our money on machines that are going to be a problem from beginning to end. They're hackable, they're difficult of access, they're not universally accessible, they're not used elsewhere. Montgomery County has just chosen hand-marked paper ballots scanned optically. So I beg you to do the right thing with our taxpayer money. And I have a question. Why did you choose, do you seem to be opting for these machines that nobody prefers? Thank you.
Next.
My name is Kevin Skoglund. I'm here on behalf of Citizens for Better Elections. We have major concerns about the voting system RFP currently being considered. The RFP scoring criteria does not consider security, resilience, accessibility, and pending legislation. Security and our ability to guarantee the integrity of the results is foremost in citizens' minds right now. Just last week, the Blue Ribbon Commission of Pennsylvania Elections recommended making cybersecurity a priority when choosing voting systems. Yet security is not being scored in this RFP. Voting systems need to be resilient. If computers malfunction or lose power on election day, then voting stops. Voters are stuck waiting in long lines, or they go home without voting. It happened in 2 Pennsylvania counties in 2018. It could happen here in 2020. Yet resilience is not being scored in the RFP. Voting must be accessible to all eligible voters, including voters with disabilities. Philadelphia is under a consent decree to provide accessible polling places. The voting machines waiting inside must be accessible too. Yet accessibility is not being scored in the RFP. The RFP also does not consider House Bill 1, which was co-sponsored by Representatives Brendan Boyle, Dwight Evans, and Mary Gay Scanlon. It would require allowing voters to vote using hand-marked paper ballots. Meanwhile, state legislation is underway to make absentee voting easier. This would significantly increase the number of absentee ballots that need to be counted on election night. Some systems allow scanning absentee ballots, while others do not. On the other hand, the RFP does award 30% of its score to any proposal offering an equal number of familiar-looking, full-face voting machines. There's only one system by one vendor which meets that criteria. That system has major problems with security, resilience, and most of all, accessibility. The accessibility review conducted for Pennsylvania certification is harsh. None of the participants were able to verify their paper ballot, and every participant had at least one problem. It would not comply with House Bill 1 or allow scanning absentee ballots. Worst of all, this system is twice the cost of all competing systems. It's up to the commissioners to go beyond the criteria of the RFP and to consider security, resilience, accessibility, and pending legislation. It's up to you to ensure that Philadelphia does not regret buying overpriced touchscreens just because they're a familiar size. The wisest investment, which is recommended by election and security experts, is hand-marked paper ballots, scanned by optical scanners, with ballot marking devices for accessibility, backed by routine post-election audits. It will require rethinking what has become familiar, but that is an essential part of making progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Susan Sachs. I'm a member of Neighborhood Networks, but I'm here to speak as a voter, and I want to thank you for opening this hearing, for shedding some sunshine on this process, because I would not have been able to find out about this otherwise, and I would have been quite upset to show up at my polling place and find more of the same thing that's been causing all the problems around this country and is causing voters like myself to lose confidence in the system. So I am here as a voter to ask you to please choose a system that has verifiable hand-marked paper ballots that are kept by election officials so that we, the voters, know that our votes have really been counted. And when there's a question, as there has been in so many places in this country, we have a paper trail. And that's really all I'm asking as a voter. I'm also what I call a clipboard voter. I'm out there urging other people to vote, knocking on doors every election to get out the vote, to ask people to exercise their constitutional right. And I hear over and over again, what's the point? How do I know my vote counts? So we need to restore faith in the system in this country. So I thank you for opening this up to the light and allowing people to speak to our need to have our votes counted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Allen. I'm from Liberty Resources, and I'm here to remind you that the voting machines must be ADA compliant. Sorry, I'm here to remind you that the voting machines must be ADA compliant, and also that the last time the city bought voting machines and spent $20 million, they ended up having to go back and retrofit those machines to be accessible. So the disability population in Philadelphia is about 16%, so it is a huge voting block. So the machines must be compliant. Unfortunately, the ES&S Express Vote XL machine performed extremely poorly on the PA Department of State review, and the testers couldn't verify their ballots, as my colleague had said. There was inconsistent navigation and poor instructions, confusing selection and deselection when using straight party voting. It does not read party affiliations in the audio ballot. The blind participants were not sure what was happening during the ballot printing process, and there were many problems with the screen design. When people selected large text, it did not get much larger. So we urge you to not choose this machine and consider accessibility when choosing a voting machine.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Steve Strauss. I'm a new voter moving into Fairmount in the next few weeks. I'm delighted to be moving into Philly. However, I come from Montgomery County. And frankly, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that counties like Montgomery are doing the prudent thing and prioritizing security, voter verifiability of the voting system. And so they moved to a hand-marked paper ballot system. Frankly, like the Temple professor, I just don't understand why those aren't your priorities. It just seems so basic. Simplicity, security, given the world we live in, cyber wars, hacking, whatever you want to call it. Our intelligence agencies on every level tell us that these problems are real. And yet, the ES&S machine that you're talking about is most vulnerable to those very risks. In addition to cost, what you're suggesting is a black box with bells and whistles. A black box where the voter really doesn't know what's being recorded on that machine, and where software as the constant intermediary in the voting process can frankly be hacked, subject to errors. These machines have all kinds of problems, and they're bulky and costly besides. So I'll end with the cost issue. These machines are double the price of hand-marked paper ballot systems. Now, I'm just moving into Philly, but I know Philly is the most poverty-stricken major city in the country. How can we afford to take the high-end system that provides less? And I hope you all will reconsider and really do the right thing based on cost, simplicity, and security. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Libby Rossoff, and rather than repeat what all these other people said, which I agree with, I want to add the fact that as somebody who works at the polls on election day, I have seen what happens when machines don't work. And I have seen what happens when voters have no way to be sure that what they thought they put into that machine is actually what got recorded. We had problems with previous votes. We don't know, how off it was. Fortunately, it didn't matter for the particular election because there were other areas, other parts of the city that had enough votes so that things probably went the way that my poll went, or should have gone. but we really have no verifiable way. It's frustrating. And if there is something wrong with the machine and how it looks and how it relates to what people push, I don't understand how this faith in technology overrides the need to have something verifiable. We all have experienced the past few months what the American faith in technology has done for us. I'm not a Luddite, I love technology, but I don't think that this is the best way to go for the citizens of Philadelphia. They need to know that their votes count. That's it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lisa Holga, and I'm a longtime committee person in the Ninth Ward. And I'm here to read something into the record because I'm not sure, because it hadn't been presented. We had sent an email to your office because we took a vote in our January meeting with two outcomes. We are requesting that you purchase the paper ballots where we could have a recordable record. They're not hackable, and because there is a problem, and you could look up the articles. There's a lot of research. The EMS machines are hackable, basically. And right now we have a situation. I've been a long-time committee person, and I had the larger machines before, and right now we don't know if votes are tallied, basically. And the second request we have is that we slow down the process and we open it up more. We think that we don't need to have a deadline of February 13th to make this decision. And you need to have more input from people in Philadelphia. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gloria Gilman. I'm a second ward committee person and officer, first vice chair, and I'm the chair of Philly Neighborhood Networks. On behalf of the thousands of members of Philly Neighborhood Networks, we are highly concerned about this process and that Philadelphia not make an error in spending a huge amount of money to purchase machines that are not safe. As you've heard before, we are fully in support of hand-marked paper ballots to be read by a scanner and for a backup system for those who are disabled. It does not make sense to have a system that allegedly handles all disabled people if that jeopardizes the security of everyone else's vote. There is no one system that can satisfy every type of disability and every type of person, so that's illogical. Plus, of course, the enormous backups that develop in the polling place by machines that don't work, plus the enormous additional cost of the bigger machines. So we're particularly concerned about the fact that you're considering ES&S Express because that company has been involved in numbers of illegitimate activities where they have bribed officials who are making decisions for municipalities. We are very concerned about that. They also have hired people away from their public jobs into the private sector to work for them, which is another form of bribery. So we're concerned about that, and we hope that you take that very seriously. Look to Georgia, look to Delaware at the history of what's going on. So we thank you for asking for input. It was very short notice, and we would hope that you would ask for more input. There are many, many people who are concerned about the security of their ballots, and that is the basis of democracy, and you have a very important job here. Please take it very seriously and make a good decision for Philadelphia that doesn't waste our resources and jeopardize who we put in office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Wendy Foreman. I'm here, I'm a private citizen and I don't represent any organization. I am a voter and I'm very concerned. I'm not going to repeat the items that everybody has brought up, I agree with it all. I'm a mental health professional, and it may not occur to people how these things intersect. I see a lot of young people in my practice, some of them registering and voting for the first time. It makes me sick each time I hear them say, I don't really see the point in even registering or voting. My vote's going to be hacked. It's all fixed. What's the point? Why do I even bother? And, you know, of course, I do my best to help them understand that that's not so. What I would like to help them understand is that if there are voters in Philadelphia, that they will be able to have a paper ballot, a hand-marked paper ballot with an optical scanner. I'd like to tell them that the city of Philadelphia, also in the interest of not overspending taxpayers' money, but basically that we are going to have new voting machines that they do not have to be concerned about, that it's worth it for them to register, to exercise their franchise, to be true citizens of what I hope is still a democracy, and that this can happen. There is a lot of suspicion and paranoia, and some of it isn't paranoia because we know that certain systems can be hacked. So I'd like you to think about young people coming up in a very different world who really, you know, I know it's old school that somebody would have to use an actual writing implement and a piece of paper, but it can be done. I attest to that. And I'm also not a Luddite, I'm not a technophobe, but this is a case where it is too much for not any good, and we need to go back to some basics here. By the way, I'd like to say, Commissioner Dealey, I really appreciate how your office has handled my, what might be considered annoying phone calls. They've been great. Couldn't have asked for more support. Because, as I say, I'm just here as a citizen. I'm lucky that I got the day off from my taking care of my grandchildren, so my son-in-law can take care of them, because he knows how important it is that I come to.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your commitment.
Thank you.
So my name's Jim Marsh. I'm just a citizen of Philadelphia also. I'm with Indivisible Philadelphia, and I would agree with all the substantive points that the people have made in favor of the hand-marked paper ballots with the optical scanning. I think it's a superior system. And I think that unless there is some extremely compelling reason to revert to the ES&S type of systems, that the hand-marked paper ballot system with the optical scanning needs to be picked. The main point, though, that I would refer to is that even with this upcoming February 13th date, that without the choice of the hand-picked paper ballot with optical scanning being made, this whole issue is going to continue past February 13th for all the people that are running for office, for city commissioners, for the city council, and for the mayor. This issue is going to be continued to be scrutinized by all the people that know that the hand-picked paper ballots are superior, and it's going to be scrutinized and aired by the other candidates for the various offices. So this whole issue, both the substance of the machines and also the issues of transparency of the process, this is going to be dug into beyond February 13th if the hand-picked paper ballots are not chosen. So I would just want to remind the commissioners of this, I'm sure you're aware, but to just emphasize that the whole process, both the substance of the machines and the process of the choosing the advisory committee that we don't know the members of, and not even knowing which machines have been bid, that is all going to be aired very in a lot of detail post February 13th without the choice of the hand-picked hand-marked paper ballots being made. So I would just throw that out there, that this is going to continue to be an issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. I'm Bill Cobb. I'm currently on the National Commission for Voter Justice, which is an effort where we did work across the entire country to examine voter fraud and voter suppression prior to the last election across the country. I'm the former National Deputy Director of the Campaign for Smart Justice at the American Civil Liberties Union. And in the city of Philadelphia, I've been registering people to vote in black and brown and marginalized and impoverished communities since I was 8 years old. So I am alarmed that we would consider a wholesale change at this juncture when the majority of black and brown and impoverished people living in the city of Philadelphia have difficulty with the current processes that we have. It means that organizers that we supervise and where we find their efforts are going to be overwhelmed with trying to teach people who don't have the education level of the residents in Montgomery County, like I continuously hear, where the average median income is 70-something odd thousand and the average median income is 40,000 in Philadelphia. The majority of voters who are black and brown or who are living with arrest and criminal convictions, who are now participating in democracy in ways in which we never have before, will be disenfranchised if we implement something that is so sweeping and so unfamiliar with what they are just becoming familiar with. So while I understand the concerns of people being concerned about fraud and other activities, we are concerned about participation, about making sure that the voices of poor, black and brown, marginalized Philadelphians begin to be heard. We are the majority, but politically we are the minority, and it's because the opportunity to cast our ballot and be heard is very challenging and difficult in these current structures. So wholesale changes like the incorporation of a paper ballot, I cringe thinking about what it'll be like to explain to somebody that you have to actually go in and do something and you have to do it on paper. It's as if the California achievement test of the PSAs, we've forgotten how many errors are happening. And voter fraud is not because of the methods that we use in voting across the country. They are deeply rooted in systemic racism and America's desire to oppress or marginalize certain groups of these things. I don't see many people who reflect the citizenship of Philadelphia in this room. People can't afford to take off of work. People can't afford to leave their children. And so I am raising my voice as a leader who has been driving voter registration and GOTVs locally, statewide, and nationally to ensure the full participation of democracy for every single person. And things like this will exclude those individuals who are just becoming a fundamental part of the political fabric in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having this hearing. My name is Cynthia Schiff, and I am a Philadelphia citizen, and I'm also a poll worker. And I can tell you that with even the current machines, there were difficulties for people who are not people without disabilities and for people who had disabilities. Even the simple process of lowering the machines for people who were in wheelchairs took time and several people to be able to accommodate them. Having a paper ballot will actually be simpler for people, and if people want to have a machine for specific kinds of disabilities, having that along with it will work very, very well. Having a paper ballot that you can look at and see who you voted for and make sure that you put your mark in the right place is absolutely the simplest form for voting. It also takes care of the security problem. The way the votes are tallied and the strips of paper that the judge of the election takes home in an envelope don't have any names on it. It just has numbers. So for truly verifiable voting, if you have an actual piece of paper that you can look at, you'll know whether it has been falsified or correctly marked at the time. The other thing I wanted to point out is that this machine that was discussed has barcodes for verifying what you voted for. I certainly can't read a barcode, and I don't feel that that's going to be helpful. It's going to make everything more complicated. And the last thing I wanted to say was, as many people have spoken to here, the amount of money that it will cost to buy these machines is so disturbing to me in a city where we're looking for money to help vulnerable people in many, many other areas of social justice that we want to work on to make our city better. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to be heard for public comment? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we will proceed with the supervisor reports. Any more new business?
I have none.
Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned to the call of the chair.